Hey there, everybody. Let me answer 3 questions today. Came in. I'm going to answer them as fast and concisely as I can. First has to do with supplemental calcium. You've heard me talk about calcium in the past. Somebody actually texted me that they heard a video that I did about calcium and they actually stopped taking calcium because of their osteoporosis. And I want to just clarify a couple things and go through that with you guys. Second is I talked yesterday about, hey, send me any food you want about why it's bad for you, and I will happily do that. There were several examples that came in, and I'm going to go through those, and I'm going to put it under umbrella. You guys will get it real fast. The last one has to do with overeating, the genetics of overeating, and somebody sort of made like a statement / observation, and I would like to explore that statement with you guys a little bit more clearly. So the first one has to do with supplemental calcium, and we're in a paradigm where your mom, your grandma are taking calcium because because of their bone health, right? The idea that bone is made of calcium and therefore we need to take calcium, extra calcium, because as we get older, our bones get weaker. So let's just explore this quickly. First of all, it is vitamin D, and I already talked about. I sent out videos already to those that I'm coaching, specifically on sunlight, UVA, UVB light, nitric oxide, sulfating cholesterol, obviously the vitamin D, and how important this whole process is. But specifically vitamin D, guys, it's vitamin D that frees calcium up into the bloodstream. It's vitamin K2, which you can get in fermented foods and some dairy sources, but especially in fermented foods like kimchi, sauerkraut, anything fermented. You're going to be able to now take that calcium that's freed up in the bloodstream and put it into the bone, right? And yes, vitamin K is in charge. K1 and K2 are both in charge of blood coagulation, clotting blood, but it is specifically vitamin K2 that takes that calcium and puts it into the bone. Now, this idea of deterioration of bone over time, guys, again, I'll remind you a couple things. The last 40-day challenge, I went through meticulously how and why more protein is actually more important for an older person. There's this idea that as we get older, we don't need more protein. Wrong. Dr. Stuart Phillips, who is the world's leading expert in his laboratory on protein. I mean, look up Dr. Stuart Phillips. I sent this video out in the last 40-day challenge. He is the preeminent researcher on anything protein in the world. And listen to him talk about protein, everybody, and especially protein when it comes to older people. What else is important for older people? Strength training, putting the demand on the bone and the muscle to be strong. Now, furthermore, send me just one peer-reviewed longitudinal study that proves with any conclusivity that calcium actually does what we're claiming it does in terms of strengthening bone, meaning supplemental calcium. My argument, and not just mine, many people in this world of nutrition and research, scientific research, will argue that calcium is more harmful than it is beneficial, that it's actually the lack of vitamin D, vitamin K2, strength training, protein, that is the hub of the problem. And supplemental calcium may actually be causing more problems in terms of heart issues. That's why, guys, the average person that has a heart issue is on a calcium channel blocker. Why? Because calcium is in charge of constricting things. That's what it does. It constricts. It's think about what do muscles do? I'm contracting, I'm constricting. So you obviously need calcium to be able to do these things. It's part of the whole electrolyte balance of potassium and magnesium and calcium. There's a natural balance that needs to occur. But I want you to recognize that how many people are on calcium channel blockers because it's seen as a threat, as a danger, to sort of like, to put it in context, like cramping your heart. You don't want that to happen. So I'm not saying all this to scare you and should I avoid calcium altogether? Absolutely not. You need calcium. What I'm talking about is supplemental calcium. That in a well-balanced diet, I am making the strong suggestion, along with many experts in the world, that you're getting plenty of calcium, all right? Now, you can have that discussion with your doctor if you want to have that discussion with your doctor and you want the peer-reviewed, research about what I'm saying about vitamin D and vitamin K2 and protein and strength training, and then other people who talk about not only calcium, but iron. Like, there are people that just argue that calcium and iron are the supplements that are like killing us. But again, there are reasons why a person, especially a woman with a heavy period, would supplement with iron. But guys, it's because they're bleeding so much, they need the iron, right? That's why high iron levels, if a man has very high iron levels, one of the best ways to get rid of that is to give blood. So, but in terms of calcium and the context of what I just described, this is a different mechanism of action of what's happening. I already spent too long answering that question. So if you want more information, I will give it to you. There's a question about genetics and weight gain. Somebody was telling me that they talked to this, they have a friend who talked to a doctor who's saying that, their doctor, who is well-versed in nutrition and this and that, was suggesting that there's actually real mechanisms of addiction for food and things of this nature. It's not just the genetics for overeating. Well, guys, again, I will make the argument that it's the same thing, okay? When you look at the brain, you can make the argument that the brain is either high or a low dopamine brain, meaning its tendency is either high or low. And you can simply look at a person's behaviors. What are they doing? Are they a person that is a high risk taker? Are they going out, racing a motorcycle at 150 miles an hour? Are they gambling? Are they, what high risk behaviors are they doing? That's one type of a brain, as opposed to the brain that's more OCD, super obsessive compulsive. They want everything under control. These are like two different opposite ends of a spectrum, and I'm just giving you one example. Now, what I'm telling you is that too is also very genetic. It's epigenetic as well, in terms of the fact that, if you put somebody in an environment long enough, they will start to exhibit those behaviors out of, sort of like they're saturating themselves in the environment, and eventually the brain will sort of catch up to what it is that everybody else is doing and what that person is now forced to do. And you can create a high dopamine brain from a low dopamine brain and vice versa. That's not to say that some people don't exhibit both sides. But what I'm saying is that it's important to recognize that the way that your brain is molded in terms of those behaviors is also genetic factors. So when I talked about most of the genetics that map onto obesity have to do with overeating. This too, the reason why you overeat being addictive, right, is because you're trying to raise serotonin levels. It makes you feel really good in a short period of time, which is a type of addiction, which is also happening in the brain. And then when you map onto these genetics that you can't stop overeating because of leptin, which I described, like most of these genetics have to do with leptin response in the brain that says, I'm full, I'm good. It leads to problems. But both of these are genetic issues. Dopaminergic is a genetic issue and can be an epigenetic issue. And the leptin issue is also genetic. So, but at the end of the day, guys, how do we mitigate this? We go back to the last 40-day challenge. It has to do with selecting behaviors that allow you to feel satiated over time. Reminder, protein, fiber, finding ways to move more. Go back and listen to look at your notes for the last 40-day challenge. You'll see it. Last question has to do with, can I argue these foods, how and why they're good for you, bad for you? Bad for you. We have this impression, and just in general, because I got a bunch of them, and let's just take it, fruits and vegetables, guys. How are these bad for you? And I want to go down a little bit of I just want to elaborate on this a little bit. So first of all, the most obvious thing, I can send you people who have written books. You can walk in on the front table of Barnes and Noble, pick up the book, and you'll read these doctors talking about why fruit is bad for you because of fructose. This is just absolute bullshit nonsense. Fructose is, yes, it is fructose that is in fruit. Okay, but what else are you also getting in fruit? You are getting the fiber, you're getting the enzymes, you're getting the nutrient value of the food. Now, is it a great idea to juice your fruit, taking all the fiber out of it, things like orange juice and things like that? No, it's probably not a good idea to do that at all. In fact, there's research that doing that is not a good idea. But if you eat the whole fruit, which is how nature gave it to you, you're going to notice that it's actually pretty hard to overeat fruit, and you're getting a whole bunch of fiber and enzymes and nutrition along with that fruit. There are some fruits that are much less sugar than others, but in general, having fruit, for some people, 3 servings a day is not a problem. Now, I'm not suggesting to eat 50 servings of fruit and to juice your fruit and buy fruit juices. I've never said that. I said actually opt more for berries, blueberries, blackberries, raspberries. And the reason why I say that is because they're lower in sugar. Lemons, limes, put it into your water. I've said that very specifically many, many times. But if you want to make the argument that, well, fruit's bad for you because of the fructose and it's a sugar problem that we have in this country, well, there you go. There's the problem, guys. And, you can read the whole book about, why sugar and fructose and fruit is such nonsense. But we've done research that shows that if you just give a person fruit all day, guess what? They don't turn into obese individuals. That's not what happens, all right? The second thing is, what about leafy greens? Guys, all plants, all of them, evolutionarily, don't want to be eaten. And this is an argument that vegetarians, vegans will argue, the fact that I can't eat an animal, an animal runs away from me when I try to eat it, and therefore they're not meant to be eaten. Plants evolutionarily have developed chemicals in them that let us know that they're protecting themselves from being eaten. And if you listen to anybody in the carnivore community, this is the reason why they're saying stop eating plants. They're letting you know that things like oxalates, for example, are a real problem to the gut. And for some people, larger problems than they can possibly imagine because of what it's doing to the gut. But that's just one example. There are many chemicals that are created in the plant itself that let us know that, man, this plant is actually protecting itself from being eaten. It's tantamount to the cactus having the points on the plant. It's doing that to protect itself. Well, similarly, plants have things within them that let the animal know that's eating it, I don't want to be eating, stop eating it. Now, again, I can similarly, just to follow up with the vegan and vegetarian argument, you can say that, well, the animal runs away from me, we're not meant to eat animals. But guys, ask yourself this. This is why I have been so emphatic about organic. Animals that are raised organically, they're given the opportunity to live a pretty normal life and pretty normal animal life, which is I'm a big fan of. I'm a big proponent of that. They're fed normal food, they're raised normally, and that's why the organic label has been protected for as long as it has been. And yes, there are companies that are trying to infiltrate it and mess with it and get away with less. But ask yourself this: is it better to exist or not to exist? Is it better to have lived or not lived? So for these animals, these organic animals, because that's what I've been advocating, is organic food. Now, if you want to make the argument about like animals that are not farm raised, that are raised, in these warehouses, getting fed corn and like locked into these shelters with their heads that are absolutely not, guys. This is unacceptable. This is not okay. It is one of the main reasons that I've gone into in past manuals about if you look at phases 3 and 4 manuals, it talks very specifically about the problems with eating animals that are not organic. It's a problem, and it's not okay. And so if you want to draw that line of ethics, I'm fine with it. But when it comes to you shouldn't eat animals because you're harming animals, I ask you this question. Yes or no? Is it better to exist or not to exist? If you give an animal existence and you allow it a life on a farm to graze and do what it's supposed to do, and then you give it a humane death, is it not better that the animal existed or not? Yes or no? Because if you say no, it should have never existed in the first place, then you're talking about killing, literally a holocaust of cows across the world that would have to die because you're saying it's better that they didn't exist. And if you want to make that argument philosophically, I'll go into my book, Chasing 22, and I make an argument in the very first Prisoner where I talk about this argument about existing and existence itself. There's a whole book that argues that most people are probably better off not existing because suffering in the human existence is so bad. And as human beings living in, New Jersey and in the United States, in the tri-state area where things are so abundant, we're so removed from the fact that 90% of people on planet Earth live on less than $20 a day. 80% live on less than $10 a day. What type of life is this for the average person living on planet Earth? So guys, these are things that I think about very carefully when I make decisions about my health, ethics, and things of this nature when it comes to what I put in my body. Now, I am open to any and all conversation, but be prepared for a full-blown conversation like this when it comes to the decisions I make and why. All right, everybody, have a good rest of the day.